Now let's describe in some detail what a magnesium deficiency looks like. We know that magnesium plays a role in chlorophyll production. In fact, it's at the center of the chlorophyll molecule. And so when magnesium is lacking, chlorophyll is lacking, and thus you end up with intervenal chlorosis, like you see in this picture here. We're going to talk about this in a little more detail in the next slide. Magnesium deficiencies actually increase the susceptibility of plants to heat stress. And this has been documented in wheat and corn. And when you see a magnesium deficiency, in order to diagnose it, besides intervenal chlorosis, the symptoms always begin in the lower leaves, much like nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, except in this case, this does not look like a magnesium, it doesn't look like a nitrogen deficiency, it doesn't look like a phosphorus deficiency, and it doesn't look like a potassium deficiency. It's intervenal chlorosis in older leaves. And so when deficiencies occur, we have intervenal chlorosis. That means that in between the veins are chlorotic and the veins themselves are green. When this advances, the leaves can turn completely yellow. They could turn eventually brown because they become necrotic. In other species like cotton, for example, some of these leaves on the lower portions of plants turn reddish purple. And when I see reddish purple, I think of phosphorus, but it could be magnesium. But it's not common in most of the plants that we raise today to see reddish purple in lower leaves unless it's a phosphorus deficiency. So this occurs in older leaves. So this tells you something about magnesium in terms of translocation within plants. You find the deficiency in older leaves. And that tells you that magnesium must be translocated from the older leaves to the newer leaves. And that's unlike calcium, but it's certainly like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So let me share with you a few more pictures of magnesium deficiencies. Top left-hand corner is palm. It's probably hard to tell, but this is older leaves. And this is probably, you can take a guess where palm trees are grown. They're grown in relatively tropical environments. And so those tropical environments that have been highly weathered in terms of their soils can be lacking magnesium, and thus you see a magnesium deficiency here. On the right, there's two types of grasses. I can't tell what they are. I'm guessing either wheat or rice. And the magnesium deficiency certainly manifests itself in the bottom right-hand corner picture, where the entire leaf is just chlorotic. The bottom left-hand corner picture shows you corn, extreme case of magnesium deficiency of intervenal chlorosis on the left-hand panel. And then a producer added Epsom salt, which is magnesium sulfate. And 1 week later, this is what you see, the response on the right-hand panel. Yes, there's still intervenal chlorosis, but it's not as prevalent, certainly, as the picture on the left-hand side. One place we oftentimes do not see magnesium deficiencies or calcium deficiencies, which are both very uncommon already, but we oftentimes do not see magnesium and or calcium deficiencies in turf. And this is simply because of the root architecture and where the roots are actually located. The roots are located in an area and the roots are pretty dense, and the root system sees a lot of the soil and thus sees a lot of, relatively speaking, magnesium and calcium. So to see a deficiency in turf with respect to magnesium or calcium is really, really uncommon. So this is going a little bit backwards in the notes. I realize that, but I also wanted to bring up the point, or several points, of forms and functions of magnesium that just don't quite fit in directly with magnesium deficiencies themselves. So there's some points here. For example, the main point I want to make is something called grass tetany. And grass tetany is an issue in ruminants. So when ruminants are being fed low magnesium food, shouldn't say forages, all right, well, I guess it could be forages, but low magnesium forages. They can exhibit something called grass tetany, which leads to abnormally low blood magnesium. And when blood magnesium is low, that can lead animals to breaking bones and, of course, death. So this is an issue that's easily overcome in ruminants. But if you don't know that it might be forced by forages that contain low concentrations of magnesium to begin with, and you feed that to an animal, a ruminant, this may be the end result. Another point with respect to grass tetany is high concentrations of ammonium or potassium fertilizer rates can certainly depress magnesium uptake, right? So the concept here is relatively simple that you all now know because you are taking soil fertility and you understand the concept of cation exchange capacity. So with respect to ammonium or potassium, when those ions are in great concentrations in the soil, they occupy more of the exchange sites and kick magnesium off the exchange sites. And magnesium on exchange sites is the buffer to maintain magnesium concentrations in the soil solution for plant uptake. So if there's no buffer or a lack of buffer, plants suffer. It's important to note that grass tetany often occurs in the spring when ammonium concentrations may dominate the amount of nitrogen that's present in a soil. This happens simply over the winter, where organic nitrogen is mineralized and released as ammonium. And that builds up, and then when the season progresses, ammonium can be converted through nitrification to nitrate. Or when potassium plant concentrations are high. And grass tetany can occur when this occurs, when perhaps you simply just apply too much potassium fertilizer. So how do we overcome grass tetany? You can directly add magnesium into the diet of ruminants. Simply a magnesium salt block or salt lick is effective at preventing grass tetany. Forages in a diet of ruminants, they typically increase magnesium because they oftentimes contain greater magnesium than grasses in forages. So it should really say legumes, I guess, in the diet. Regardless, this is an indirect effect of lack of magnesium or deficiencies in our soil systems.